Hey guys, tonight we glide through candlelit corridors and ancient stone courtyards. The air smells faintly of incense and old parchment. You pass tapestries embroidered with regal triumphs, all hiding the messy truths beneath them. A distant bell echoes somewhere through time. You hear footsteps, but they never get closer. Welcome to the quiet, clumsy, and often deeply awkward world of royal deaths, the kind no one likes to put in history textbooks. Not dramatic duels or grand sacrifices, just the stuff that makes coroners sigh. One moment you're wearing a crown, the next you're stuck in a barrel under a pile of books, or being mistaken for a roast goose. You'll travel across centuries and empires drifting from silk-draped courts to frost-bitten fields. You'll meet rulers who died picking their noses, laughing too hard, or forgetting they invented the very trap that killed them. Most of all, you'll learn that power doesn't protect you from ridiculous ends. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough to post your location and the local time in the comments. Let's see who's falling asleep where. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are in ancient Sicily. The air is dry. The ground beneath your sandals crunches with dust. You feel the heat before you see it waves rising from the bronze bull sculpture in the center of the courtyard. It is not art. It is punishment. And it has been prepared for a king. Phalaris was a tyrant who ruled Acragas, a city on the southern coast. His rule was cruel even by ancient standards. Historians still argue whether he truly existed in the form described, or whether his infamy outpaced his deeds. What is certain, though, is that a device bearing his name would echo through history in whispers, the brazen bull. You step closer to the gleaming metal beast. It stands at shoulder height. Crafted with curved horns and hollow sides, the bull's belly contains a cavity large enough for a grown man. A fire is lit beneath. The idea is simple. The victim is locked inside, roasted alive, and their screams echo through a system of pipes in the bull's throat, converting them into animalistic bellows. The man to go inside first is not Phalaris. It is Perillos of Athens, the craftsman who designed the bull. He presents it to Phalaris with pride, showing how the sound ducts work and how the hatch seals tight. But Phalaris is unimpressed by cruelty dressed as invention. To test the acoustic system, he orders Perillos into the bull himself, just for a moment, just to test the echo. You feel the ground vibrate as the fire is stoked. Perillos realizes too late that he has become his own demonstration. When he screams, the sound filters through the pipes, creating a deep, pained bellow that rises into the air like a tragic trumpet. Phalaris nods in satisfaction. Then he has Perillos pulled out still alive, badly burned. It should have ended there. But Phalaris throws him off a cliff anyway. Mercy was not part of the show. But history is strange. Years later, Phalaris himself is overthrown. His enemies capture him. And in a moment of dark symmetry, they decide to put the tyrant exactly where he once placed others. Back inside the bronze bull, same fire, same scream. But this time, no one is listening with admiration. You can smell the metal heating, feel the heat rise. Imagine the horror of dying inside a device you once admired, the acoustics of your agony turned into entertainment. Historians debate how widely the brazen bull was actually used. Some argue it was a one-off tale, more myth than mechanism. Others believe it was used in other cities in later centuries. There are records of similar devices appearing during the Roman Empire but never confirmed. The uncertainty only adds to the discomfort. One fringe theory suggests the bull was never meant as a torture device at all, but rather a tool of performance, its sound pipes part of musical ceremonies. But, if that were true, it became something far darker in execution. You walk away from the bull. The courtyard is silent now. The smell of scorched bronze lingers, and the message is, simple cruelty can boomerang. The trap you build for others may one day have your name etched on it. The night moves on. You hear footsteps echo again. This time, they're lighter. You're not in Sicily anymore. But you'll stay with this thought sometimes. History remembers the horror, but forgets the embarrassment. Unless it's both. You follow the sound of rustling silk and muffled voices. The walls change. Frescoes fade into floral wallpaper. Candlelight gives way to lantern glow. You're now in Austria. It's the 17th century. The castle around you is Baroque, wide halls, polished staircases, cold marble floors. Outside, frost clings to the ivy. Inside, Count Hans von Wurmbrand is pacing, nervous, agitated, embarrassed. You're in the private wing of the palace. It's after midnight. A scandal has erupted. There's been a heated argument. No one knows exactly why the Count stormed away from dinner, but witnesses recall he was red-faced and stumbling. He climbs the narrow back stairs to his chamber, still fuming. He does not want to be seen. That proves fatal. Count Hans is not a famous figure. He governed modest lands. But his death made the history books not because of his politics, not because of his legacy, but because of his pants. It's unclear whether he tripped or slipped, but as he struggled to climb over a stone balustrade outside his room, perhaps to sneak into another chamber without being noticed, his knee-length silk breeches caught on an iron latch and held. He dangled for nearly 20 minutes, slowly strangled by his own wardrobe. When guards found him, it was too late. The breeches were considered cutting-edge fashion, tight at the thigh, looser at the hip. They fastened with decorative cords and stiffened pleats. Elegant, but not forgiving. His death was ruled accidental, though rumors swirled was he fleeing an affair. A duel. Was he drunk? Historians still argue whether the act was foolishness or fear, but no one contests the outcome. His death mask remains on display in a small regional museum. The breeches did not survive, though one record claims they were burned by servants ashamed of what had happened. That might be apocryphal, but the detail sticks. This wasn't the first time noble attire led to disaster. One emperor choked on his own ruffled collar. A French regent tripped on a jeweled shoe, fell into a fountain, and drowned. But Count Hans was different. His end was quiet, awkward, and largely unseen, except by the history books that refuse to forget. There is a fringe theory that the Count may have been reenacting a scene from a play. He was known to dabble in amateur performance and had recently attended a production of The Broken Ladder, a tragedy involving a hanging noble. If true, it would mean the death was not just accidental, but a performance turned real. You imagine the silence of that night, the pale stone terrace, the cold iron hook, the way one foot dangled below the wall then stopped moving. Death by fashion. You weren't supposed to laugh, but many did. And still the embarrassment outlived the man. His family reportedly changed the design of their house crest afterward, removing a pair of crossed cords that once symbolized unity. They never explained the change. The wind outside howls faintly now. The corridors behind you close. The stone grows colder as you drift forward. Another royal death waits around the bend. Another accident. Another fumble. Another legacy tarnished not by treason, but by trousers. You're now inside a banquet hall in early Renaissance France. The air is heavy with roasted meat, honeyed wine, and the faint musk of wool tapestries soaking in years of candle smoke. You pass under a beam decorated with dried herbs, garlands, and goose feathers. The music has faded. Laughter bubbles along the long oak table like a brook. Trays of pastries shimmer with sugar. Pewter goblets clink. And then one man gasps. Louis de Valois. Duke of Orléans leans back in his seat. He slaps the table. A hearty laugh escapes his lips, full-bodied and unfiltered. A joke has landed. Some say it was about a rival's mustache. Others claim it was a crude pun. Historians still argue whether it was political satire or toilet humor. But the Duke finds it hilarious. You watch his expression change, from mirth to panic, from flush to pale. His hand rises to his throat. He is choking. At first, no one reacts. It seems like more laughter, but his eyes bulge. His chair tips slightly. Someone reaches for him too late. Louis collapses sideways onto the floor with a dull thud, muffled by the rushes beneath him. In the quiet that follows, a servant kneels beside him and finds no pulse. The culprit, it turns out, is absurd. A small goose feather. During the meal, Louis had bitten into a roasted goose stuffed with aromatic herbs and wrapped in golden pastry. Feathers had been used during preparation to baste and brush the meat. One, whether by accident or poor kitchen hygiene, found its way inside. As Louis laughed, he inhaled sharply. The feather lodged deep into his throat. You imagine the texture light as breath, delicate yet inflexible enough to wedge into the airway. No Heimlich maneuver existed. No trained medical aid. Just wine panic and hands too slow. The hall was sealed. The Duke's body was covered with a green velvet cloth. The party ended in sobs and whispers. Servants were interrogated. Some were dismissed. One cook was jailed for a time, then exiled. No official charges were ever filed. After all, how do you prosecute a feather? Rumors spread quickly. Some said it wasn't a feather at all, but poison delivered on a needlepoint. Others blamed an ancestral curse. A few even claimed the ghost of a past enemy appeared in the hall that night, seen only by the doomed Duke. But none of that stuck. The coroner's report, handwritten and brittle with time notes. Blockage of the throat by foul matter. The wording leaves little room for drama. A fringe theory largely dismissed suggests that Louis had a pre-existing condition, a malformed epiglottis that made him more susceptible to choking. If true, it wouldn't have mattered. The feather was real, the death absurd. His tomb lies in the Basilica of Saint Denis next to kings and warriors. His epitaph does not mention the cause of death. But at every dinner after guests were offered cloth napkins folded carefully and whispered warnings, chew slowly, and never laugh with your mouth full. The moment lingers in your mind. A powerful noble struck down not by war or betrayal, but by poultry. The kind of demise that history tries to gloss over, but never quite manages to erase. The light in the hall dims. The plates remain uneaten. You step over a spilled goblet and move toward a side corridor where the chill returns. A castle should feel safe. But even a feather can betray you. You shuffle through damp stone corridors now. The air grows thicker. A sour scent wafts up from below earth mildew, something else. You descend worn stairs into a darker part of the castle. The torchlight fades behind you. You are in medieval Germany. Year 1184. Castle Königslutter. King Henry VI has not yet taken the throne. His cousin, Duke Frederick of Swabia, is hosting a grand council. You approach the meeting chamber. It is overcrowded. Nobles jostle for space. Cloaks brush against stone. Voices bounce off the vaulted ceiling. The topic of debate is inheritance and land division, the kind of tense but necessary business that kept noble bloodlines from turning into open warfare. You pass by figures with fur-lined collars and wax-stiffened scrolls. Then a figure steps aside. A trap door is left open. Down it goes straight into a pit latrine. Inside, the wooden boards have rotted. A small group of nobles had been using the adjoining room as a makeshift council antechamber. The floor was not designed to bear weight. One by one, the boards splinter. You feel a moment of weightlessness, screams, then silence. The room collapses. A dozen men vanish into the darkness below. This isn't just any hole, it's the castle's waste pit, the latrine, designed to funnel human waste into a deep, sealed chamber. When the boards give way, they fall directly into the foul, slurry liquid semi-solid and impossible to climb. Walls smooth with slime. Air unbreathable. Among the dead is Heinrich von Diesen, a Bavarian count. He is remembered not for valor, but for the location of his death. One witness described the scene as noble robes floating like dead crows. Rescue was nearly impossible. Ropes were lowered. A few were pulled out, half-conscious, vomiting, never the same again. The historical record notes that the pit had not been cleaned in nearly 2 years. This wasn't just sewage. It was layered history decay upon decay. And it swallowed them whole. Historians still argue whether the collapse was truly accidental. One theory posits that the boards were deliberately weakened, sawed from beneath by a servant loyal to a rival house. Another theory blames poor maintenance. The castle was under partial renovation, and the storage room above the pit had been converted into sleeping quarters for lower-ranking barons. A fringe account written in a monk's journal suggests divine punishment. The Duke had denied funds to a nearby monastery just weeks earlier. The chronicler called the event God's privy justice. Either way, the embarrassment was total. News spread quickly, and soon the phrase, "Don't end like Diesen" entered tavern speech. Nobles became wary of where they stood. Stone floors were tapped before councils began. Latrines were reinforced. One estate even built its outhouse entirely above ground to avoid future subterranean accidents. Imagine standing above the whole cloth pressed to your face, the stench unbearable, the legacy irreversible. Account a baron and several knights all lost to the very thing they flushed away daily. Not war, not poison, just gravity wood rot and bad timing. You back away from the crumbled chamber. The air clears slightly. The castle resumes its silence. But for years afterward, the phrase death by dung would haunt German poetry. Nobles hired engineers to inspect their privy chambers. Some refused to use shared facilities at all. And still, no one remembers what the council was arguing about. You're no longer underground. You emerge into a vast marble courtyard, sunlight bouncing off pale columns. But the light feels harsh, too sharp. The heat presses against your skin like wet fabric. You squint. It's ancient Rome, early 1st century A.D. You're inside the Domus Aurea, the golden house of Emperor Claudius, or perhaps his successor. The sources blur. The names vary. But the fate remains the same. The man you watch is powerful, respected, feared, and full. So very, very full. He has just finished the banquet, an event designed not just for sustenance, but spectacle. Tables groan beneath whole peacocks, honey-drenched locusts, bread shaped like zodiac signs. The emperor eats not with hunger, but obligation. Power demands a performance. Every bite is chewed with dignity. Every toast met with wide-eyed nods. You hear the burps before you see the signs. His face flushes. He pats his belly gently at first, then harder. His breathing grows shallow. A servant offers Fennel a known digestive. He waves it off. Another offers oil of anise. No use. The emperor rises, staggers, and collapses on the mosaic floor. His robe darkens where he lands. At first it's assumed he fainted, but his body begins to bloat. His abdomen distends. His skin takes on a taut, unnatural sheen. Physicians are summoned men who carry bronze instruments and outdated theories. They diagnose the fullness of the humors. They suggest purging. But the emperor is already unresponsive. He dies not of poison nor blade, but gastrointestinal rupture. His insides, strained by gluttony, give out. Most likely the stomach wall or intestine tore open from pressure. Internal bleeding begins. Pain would have been swift, then blotted out by shock. He likely didn't suffer long. But the aftermath, unforgettable. Historians still argue which emperor this was. Some point to Claudius, others to his stepson Nero. A few fringe texts even blame a minor Eastern Roman ruler centuries later. The names change, but the account persists in Roman gossip scrolls. He fed like Jupiter and burst like Bacchus. One curious footnote comes from Pliny the Elder, who referenced the man who consumed mountains and became one. He didn't name names, but the metaphor stuck. The death triggered reforms, albeit minor ones. Later emperors introduced palate cleansers. Some dined in cooler rooms to suppress appetite. Certain foods like raw onion were banned for their swelling nature. It didn't stop the culture of excess, but it slowed its pace. You imagine the silence that followed. A single fig, half eaten, lies beside his hand. Wine pools under a silver goblet. Musicians pack away their lyres. The man was revered. He built roads, temples, and coinage. But history locked onto his stomach. Not his laws, the weight of legacy undone by the weight of dinner. And as you step away from the cooling body, you pass a column etched with earlier victories, naval campaigns, census records, triumphs. But no mention of the moment when indulgence became implosion. Now you stand under gray skies, the wind sharp against your cheeks. The land around you is wild, forested, and steeped in mist. You are in Eastern Europe somewhere near present-day Romania. It is the 15th century. Drums echo faintly in the valley below. You hear shouts, but not of war. These are celebration cries, not battle commands. A royal figure rides out from the gates of a stone keep, his cloak billowing behind him. He is young, proud, too proud. His name is lost in translation, but his lineage connects to the house of Basarab, the family that birthed Vlad the Impaler. Tonight he hosts a feast for his wedding, or perhaps a coronation. Sources conflict. But what is clear is that he intends to make a spectacle. A horse stands ready in the courtyard, adorned in ribbons, its reins dusted with gold thread. A long ceremonial pike stands nearby, an ornamental weapon not meant for actual use. You watch the prince mount the horse in a single, confident motion. The crowd cheers. Then he rises in the saddle, attempting a trick. He is young and has seen knights do it before. One foot on the saddle, arms wide like wings, he attempts to balance, perhaps to toss wine into the crowd or to recite a boast. No one knows for sure. His foot slips. His torso twists. He falls not onto dirt, not onto stone, but directly onto the ornamental pike, which had been placed upright for display. The spearhead pierces through him cleanly. It is not immediate death. Witnesses say he gasped once, then slumped. The courtyard falls silent. A few women scream. One fainted. A servant vomits. The pike had been intended to honor his military ancestors, those who once lined their borders with staked enemies. Now he joins that image in a grotesque, accidental echo. Historians still argue whether this tale refers to Vlad II Dracul's cousin or a lesser boyar prince of Moldavia. Names are scattered. The accident appears in folk ballads more than official chronicles. Still, the image persists. The body is removed hours later. The feast continues with muted tones. One ballad recorded later includes the line, "He danced upon the pole he once raised for others." It's likely apocryphal, but it spread. A fringe historian once suggested the accident was no accident, that jealous cousins tampered with the horse's reins or greased the prince's boots. But no charges were filed, and the courtyard was soon paved over. You turn away from the scene. The horse, still adorned, stands trembling nearby. Its hooves scuff the blood-darkened stones. This was not a death of battle, not betrayal, just pride, balance, misjudgment. A celebration cut short by gravity and poor staging. And in the decades that followed, the nobility of the region would forbid upright ceremonial spears at weddings, a rule etched not in law, but in quiet fear. You are in the cellar of a medieval hall now. The light is low. Barrels line the walls in perfect rows, each stamped with the royal seal. The scent of fermenting grapes hangs heavy in the air, sweet woody with an edge of vinegar. You hear laughter from above. Someone is singing. A celebration is underway. And down here, one man is far too deep into the wine. This is Bavaria, early 1300s. The noble's name is Lord Adalbert. He's known for his hospitality, his wealth, and his fondness for drink. Tonight, he celebrates his son's betrothal. The hall is filled with guests. Roasted boar, pickled onions, baked apples, and flagons of red wine move steadily from tray to table. But Adalbert does not stay upstairs. He comes down here alone. He wants to show a few special guests his private cask, a huge barrel filled with his rarest vintage. It was imported from southern Gaul, aged 12 years, sealed with wax. Adalbert insists on tapping it himself. He opens the valve. Wine gushes out faster than expected. It spills onto the floor. He slips. He falls. Into the barrel. No one sees it happen. The barrel is half full, but it is wide. He tumbles head first. The lip catches behind his knees. His boots kick against the rim. His hands flail in the dark. But the walls are slick, coated in sediment and alcohol. He cannot turn, cannot breathe. He drowns. By the time servants find him, he is motionless. His body is limp, his clothes soaked purple. The wine is ruined. The guests upstairs are told he fainted from heat. But word spreads quickly. A nobleman drowned in his own wine. Not in battle, not at sea, but in a cask. Historians still argue if the death was purely accidental. Some suspect his heart failed first. Others suggest sabotage, a nudge, a push. But no foul play was proven. The official report listed asphyxiation by immersion. The cask was destroyed, not burned, just dismantled piece by piece and buried outside the estate walls. A fringe rumor claims the wood was later used to make coffins, but this was never confirmed. The tragedy became local legend. Peasants told their children, "Don't drink what you can't swim in." In nearby taverns, drunks would toast Adalbert with mock cries of, "May your feet stay dry." The incident had broader consequences. Royal households began securing wine cellars with chains. Guests were no longer allowed below without escorts. Some vintners added ladders to barrels as a grim precaution. You step back from the shadows now. The wine-slick stone still glistens faintly. The torchlight plays tricks on the floor. You picture his final seconds. The muffled shouts, the spinning blur of crimson, the impossible weight of a liquid meant for pleasure. A man of wealth, drowned in luxury, and not a soul heard it. The temperature drops as you enter a chamber deeper than the cellars. Your breath curls in front of you. Walls of rough stone enclose a vault with no windows. Gold gleams under dim torchlight stacked in coins layered in plates shaped into animals' armor goblets. You are in Anatolia. Somewhere near Sardis. The century is unclear. The legend points to King Croesus, but others claim a lesser-known satrap centuries later. You step carefully. The coins are stacked so high they almost touch the ceiling. A narrow path cuts between them. The man you follow is paranoid, eyes darting, fingers trembling. He clutches a scroll, perhaps a ledger. His guards stay behind. This vault is his alone. This is the man who feared betrayal more than death, who trusted no banks, no stewards. He believed that gold must be seen, touched, weighed personally, so he had it buried, not scattered in vaults, but hoarded in one room, underground, fortified, secret. But the air is thin, the door is heavy. When it seals, it does so completely. And now it does. No one knows if it was sabotage or just bad timing. A gust of air, a faulty hinge, but the stone slab slams shut behind him. The torch flickers, then dies. He is left in the dark, alone, trapped in the room he built to protect himself. The irony would be cruel if it weren't so slow. He tries to move the door. His fists bruise against the stone. He screams, but the vault is designed to muffle sound, to keep intruders out, and now to keep him in. The air becomes stale. The cold turns to damp. The treasure glows dimly for a few more hours in reflected torch ash. Then, nothing. He dies, surrounded by unimaginable wealth. His body is found days later when the guards, concerned by his absence, pry open the seal. By then, it's too late. His face is twisted, frozen mid-cough. One hand clutches a gold chain. The other is stained with blood from trying to claw the walls. Historians still argue who the man was. Croesus, the famously rich king of Lydia, is often mentioned, but most agree he died in captivity after losing a war. Others suggest a later Persian satrap whose name never made it past regional records. The identity may never be confirmed, but the story persists. A fringe account found in a 9th century Armenian chronicle claims the vault was cursed, that the gold was melted down from stolen temple idols, that any man who hoarded it would be buried with it. This version adds a serpent of flickering vision and other flourishes not found in earlier sources. What remains consistent is the image a ruler entombed by greed. Afterward, the vault was sealed again. But not before rumors spread. Peasants told stories of the golden coffin. Nobles reconsidered their vault designs. In Byzantium, laws were drafted requiring dual-key systems for royal treasuries so no man could enter alone. You walk past the piles of coins now. They don't shimmer. They just sit, silent, heavy, as if waiting for the next fool. His wealth did not save him. It sealed him. You touch nothing. The jungle parts with a hush, not a rustle. Heavy air presses down around you, thick with humidity and the scent of mango, damp leather, and warm earth. You are in South Asia, the 18th century. A royal procession winds its way through a dirt path carved into forest. Silk canopies ripple above glistening armor. Musicians chant from both sides of the caravan. But all eyes are on the massive beast in front. An elephant, draped in gold-threaded blankets, anklets on each foot, its tusks tipped with silver. On top sits Maharaja Ratan Singh, regal, calm, hands raised in salute. He waves slowly to the villagers lining the trail. For his people, this is a moment of grandeur. For him, it is routine. You hear a sudden shift in tone, a change in the drums. The elephant stops. Its ears flap back. It trumpets short and loud. Not playful. Alarmed. There's a delay. Then panic. The mahout, its rider and guide, tries to regain control, but something has gone wrong. A snake, maybe, or a bee sting. No one is sure. Historians still argue over the cause. What they agree on is what happened next. The elephant turns. It rears onto its hind legs. The platform, carefully balanced, tilts violently. The Maharaja slides one sandal lost in the air. He hits the elephant's neck, then slips further toward its shoulder. His robes tangle. He falls, directly beneath the beast's front foot. The crushing force is immediate. Bones break before he hits the ground fully. One foot, then the other. 2 tons of panic. By the time the elephant is calmed, sugar cubes, soft cooing, distant drums, the Maharaja is dead. Flattened, not recognizable. A flattened headdress is all that remains on the path. The crowd doesn't scream. They freeze. Some kneel. Others back away slowly. A priest tries to declare the moment a divine calling. A royal chronicler later claims the Maharaja whispered a prayer just before he fell. A fringe report insists the death was a conspiracy, that the elephant had been trained to react to a signal. But no evidence followed. The elephant, meanwhile, was retired. Sent to a monastery stable where it reportedly refused to eat for weeks. Whether that's guilt or legend is anyone's guess. His son took the throne 3 days later. He entered the palace not on an elephant, but on foot. This event led to subtle changes in protocol. Future royal processions removed heavy platforms from elephants altogether. Mahouts carried double ropes. Some courts stopped using elephants during monsoon season. Others abandoned them entirely for horse-led carriages. The press called it a tragic accident. The people whispered a different phrase: when the mountain steps back on its own. You stand where he fell. The ground still shows 2 faint impressions side by side, deeper than the rest of the path. No matter how high you rise, you are never above gravity or the will of beasts. The hallway narrows. You pass from humid forest air into the cold echo of a stone chamber. The ceiling arches above like the spine of some great beast. The smell is different here. Dust leather bindings, dry parchment. You are in northern Italy, late 16th century. A ducal palace, quiet, private, with one room that few are allowed to enter. You step into it now, the private library of Duke Lorenzo de' Madrassi. Walls climb 20 feet, packed tight with tomes, scrolls, journals, ledgers. This is not just a reading room, it's a fortress of knowledge. The Duke, a recluse in his later years, spent more time here than in court. Surrounded by thoughts, not people. He reads not for leisure, but for conquest. His books include military theory, ancient alchemy tax codes, the breeding cycles of royal horses. Stacked by category. Recorded by hand. On the night in question, the Duke asks for a specific volume. A rare treatise on siege mechanics written in Greek. It is shelved high topmost level. The ladders here are hand-carved, narrow, and old. He insists on climbing himself. He does not trust others to retrieve his texts. The librarian watches nervously. The Duke ascends. He reaches the top, pulls the book. But the weight distribution is off. Perhaps he grabs one book too many. Perhaps a scroll shifts. The shelf groans, then tips. A wall of books hardbound, many with brass corner plates, tumbles down. The ladder shakes. The Duke tries to descend, but is struck in the shoulder. Then the head. He falls. The shelf follows. The crash is deafening. Leather bindings burst. Paper flies. Candlelight catches floating motes of dust. Beneath the weight, the Duke lies still. Not crushed entirely, but pinned, suffocated, and unconscious within seconds. By the time help arrives, it is too late. His breathing had stopped long before. Historians still argue why he refused assistance. Pride paranoia. A lifetime of insisting that only he knew the proper order of things. Some suggest the shelves were never secured properly. A budget oversight. One letter from a palace steward mentions. His Grace refuses nails in his walnut cabinetry. A strange preference that became fatal. A fringe account in a rival family's diary claims the shelf was tampered with. The claim is widely dismissed. No suspects were ever questioned. The incident was ruled a death of misadventure. Afterward, the library was sealed for 1 year. Then opened only with new rules, no ladders beyond 10 feet. Books heavier than 5 pounds stored at eye level. 2 clerks present at all times. A portrait of the Duke still hangs in the entryway painted before the accident. One hand rests on a globe. The other grips a book's spine. You walk past the overturned shelf, now reinforced with thick oak beams. Books are tied in clusters with linen rope. The dust never quite settles. He sought mastery over knowledge. But in the end, the library mastered him. The air turns sweet, too sweet. You're now inside a lavish dressing chamber bathed in soft afternoon light. Golden drapes filter the sun into honey-colored stripes across the floor. Every surface gleams, mirrors, brass trays, polished sandalwood tables. You are in 18th century France. Versailles, the royal apartments of Queen Elise de Fontenay. She is alone with her attendants. Her morning toilette is a ritual, a kind of performance. Perfumed oils, crushed rose balm, a cloud of violet powder, and most dangerously ambergris-scented alcohol sprays applied with a soft linen cloth. It is luxury. It is identity. It is flammable. She steps into a wide hoop skirt of blue silk, whalebone ribs, 10 petticoats beneath, every inch brushed with a faint perfume. A candle sits beside the mirror. Just a little one. For scent. For mood. For show. Then a servant drops a hairbrush. She bends to pick it up. Her elbow nudges the candle. The edge of her gown brushes the flame. It happens in silence. At first, no one notices. Just a glow beneath the fabric. Then a crackle. A hiss. A puff of white smoke. Then fire. The dress ignites with terrifying speed. The oils soaked into the fabric become fuel. The alcohol base of her perfume's ethanol accelerates the spread. The skirts trap heat against her legs. She screams. The maids panic. One throws water, but too little. One tries to smother her with an embroidered cushion. It ignites too. The queen collapses before the fire is out. Her skin is burned in deep blistered sheets. The room fills with smoke and the choking scent of scorched silk. She survives the fire, but only barely. Infection sets in within hours. The court physician notes fever delirium and the blackening of the wounds. She dies 2 days later. Historians still argue if it was her perfume or the room's drapes that contributed more to the fire's speed. Some blame a new synthetic oil introduced by an ambitious merchant. A fringe rumor claims sabotage a rival courtier replaced her usual balm with a flammable blend. But there is no proof. What is certain is this: her death led to change. Flame regulations swept the palace. Open candles were banned from dressing rooms. Perfumes were reformulated with less volatile ingredients. A new protocol required a servant to hold a wet cloth at all morning rituals, just in case. And still copies of her beauty routine survive, written in delicate script, bound in leather, passed through noble salons. Young women admired her complexion, her scent, her composure. Few remembered how she died. You linger in the room. The mirror is cracked. The scorched cushion remains on a pedestal as warning. Sunlight glints off a silver perfume atomizer, empty now. Its cap blackened. The lesson hangs in the air. Vanity needs no enemy. It carries its own spark. The frost greets you as you cross the threshold. No more perfume. No more velvet. Only snow, silence, and a dry wind that whispers through bare branches. You are in Russia now. The year is 1730. The Tsar, Peter II, is 17. He walks alone into the night. The winter palace is quiet. Servants sleep. Courtiers drink behind heavy doors. But the young Tsar, restless from fever and dreams, steps outside with only a cloak. No guards, no boots, just slippers. He wanders into the palace grounds. The snow is deep. It fills his footprints even as he leaves them. He walks past a frozen fountain, past the stables, past the prayer chapel. Further than anyone expects. He does not return. By dawn they find him behind the rear gardens, curled against a marble statue, barely visible beneath a sheet of ice. His pulse is gone. A hand is frozen around his neck, not in fear, but in instinct, clutching the collar of a cloak he never tightened. His slippers are missing. One lies near the sundial. The other is still inside. Historians still argue why he left the palace that night. Some say fever dreams drove him. He had shown signs of smallpox or pneumonia days before. Others whisper of a secret meeting, a lover, an oath. But no one ever came forward. The Tsar said nothing to anyone before vanishing. A fringe account claims he was following a dog his favorite Malishka had been seen barking at the garden door moments before. The dog was later found lying near the boy's body, its fur stiff with frost. The official report listed exposure, a term that sounds clinical but means he froze to death. Alone, in silence. After his death, the court imposed strict curfews. Servants were posted at all exits. Fires burned longer in the lower halls. The Tsarina who succeeded him ordered fur-lined slippers be standard issue for all children of the palace. His funeral was small, private. The boy who might have ruled a continent left no heirs. His reign lasted less than 2 years. You stand at the garden's edge now. The statue he leaned against has been moved, but the outline in the gravel remains. Not marked. just flattened, like a shadow that never left. No enemies, no battle, no scandal. Just a cold night, and a door left unlatched. The trees around you grow sparse and twisted. The air is dry again, not cold, just indifferent. You hear wind whistling across empty stone. You're in the Scottish Highlands now. Early 1600s. A hunting lodge sits in a clearing surrounded by low hills and tired pines. The scene is quiet. Too quiet. Lord Angus MacCraith is missing. He rose early ahead of the hunting party. He often did, known for his independence, for his silence. He walked the moors alone, musket in hand, thick plaid wrapped around his shoulders. But this morning, he doesn't return. His horse is still in the stable. No shots heard. No game retrieved. They search the hills, the marshes, the creek beds. Nothing. Until one of the dogs returns. It's limping, covered in blood. At first they assume it's injured, but the wounds aren't its own. There's meat in its teeth, strips of woolen cloth stuck to its paw. They follow its trail. Behind a low ridge under an outcropping, they find what remains of Lord MacCraith, what's left of him. His body is torn. Torn not by wolves, not by wildcats, but by dogs. His own. The pack he raised, fed, hunted with, trusted. Historians still argue how it happened. Some say he collapsed heart failure or a seizure. Alone, helpless. And the dogs, confused, grew restless, then hungry. Others suggest something darker, that he struck one of them in anger, that the pack turned, or that he slipped, hit his head, and the scent of blood triggered instinct. A fringe theory from a later diary hints at madness that MacCraith had been raving for weeks, talking to shadows, firing his musket at clouds. One servant wrote, "The hounds knew before we did. Something inside him had changed. Whatever the reason, the truth is clear. He died not in battle, not in bed, but in teeth and confusion. By creatures he raised himself. The pack was destroyed, all but one. The oldest, named Rua, was spared, blind in one eye. It refused to eat after the incident. It died within the month. The estate sealed the lodge. No hunting allowed on its lands for 3 years. The woods were avoided. Children told stories of the bleeding lord whose ghost wandered with empty eyes and open palms. You walk past the low ridge. The soil here is still marked, not with stones, just a circle of blackened grass where nothing seems to grow. One mistake, one weakness, surrounded by loyalty that turned to hunger, and not a single bark was heard. Now you're in a quiet stone courtyard. Low arches line the walls. The air is warm, still faintly metallic. You are in Renaissance Spain. Late 1400s. Afternoon sun filters through latticed windows. Doves call from the rooftops. A nobleman sits on a marble bench, dabbing at his nose with a monogrammed cloth. He is Don Esteban de Aragon, Duke of Belmonte. Respected, wealthy, and cursed with the kind of health that never quite settles. Prone to headaches, nosebleeds, fainting spells when the heat spikes. Today is no different. He leans back, tilts his head. Another drop falls. Crimson on ivory linen. He sighs. This has been happening more often. The physician says it's from the dry winds or blood excited by humors. He has been advised not to overstrain, not to ride, not to climb stairs. But Esteban is proud. He walks the garden daily, writes poetry, picks at citrus fruit with a small ivory blade, and often picks his nose. Servants have noticed. His valet leaves clean cloths on every table. His wife frowns but says nothing. It is considered an impolite but harmless habit. Until today. He raises a finger again, rubs, then picks. A little too deep. A little too far back. The blood comes fast. This is not a polite trickle. It pours. Down his lip, onto his tunic, into his throat. He gasps, coughs, collapses sideways off the bench. By the time a servant reaches him, his pulse has faded. Blood pools under his cheek, mixing with crushed violets in the dust. A final smear darkens the marble at his feet. The physician, when summoned, is hesitant. He records hemorrhage of the inner skull, likely a ruptured vessel aggravated by trauma. Today, we'd call it a fatal nasal aneurysm or damage to the posterior ethmoidal artery. Historians still argue how much of the incident was self-inflicted. Was it just bad luck? Was there an underlying condition? Some medical historians suggest he had hereditary hemophilia. Others point to high blood pressure exacerbated by the Iberian heat. One fringe account claims the Duke was cursed by a monk whose land he seized by a rival, or even by a disappointed suitor of his daughter. But no credible evidence ever surfaced. His funeral was private. His widow instructed that no red be used in the ceremony, only white, gray, and blue. The bench where he died was removed. The courtyard was resurfaced with tiles imported from Seville. But the stain remained visible for years, especially after rain. In the years following, a quiet campaign began among the nobility, a discouragement of manual contact with the face. Gloves became more common. Physicians started prescribing lavender-scented cloths to reduce the temptation of picking. One pamphlet even warned of fatal consequences from aggressive grooming. You look at the garden now. The air is still metallic. A dove flutters away from a fig tree. A servant steps out, shakes a fresh cloth, and places it on a tray. A man ruled provinces, amassed land, wrote sonnets, and died because he wouldn't stop touching his nose. Sometimes pride is no match for a broken blood vessel. The room darkens again as you step inside a dim ceremonial hall. The walls are lined with wooden masks and painted hides. A low fire flickers at the far end, casting shadows that sway like dancers. You are in Crete. Possibly even earlier, somewhere between myth and recorded ritual. The year is a guess. Perhaps 800 BCE. Perhaps later. What is known a festival is underway. Loud, wild, and deeply rooted in tradition. The man you see is a king, or a high priest, or both. His name has been lost, but the event he leads is known an ancient fertility rite performed to honor the spring. It involves feasting, rhythmic chants, and most memorably a sacred performance in costume. The costume, A cow, not symbolic, literal. A full-body cow suit made from stitched leather bone hoops and colored dyes. The headpiece is heavy, horns carved from wood, bells dangle at the knees. Inside, the man must crawl hunch-twist to stay upright. But the crowd cheers. They chant. They drum. This is tradition. You watch as he steps into the suit. His attendants tighten the fastenings. The mouthpiece allows him to breathe, but barely. The tail is stitched to sway with his hips. When he walks, it looks almost real. Then the accident. A curtain is lit as part of the ritual. Flames flare briefly to symbolize the rising sun. But a stray spark leaps, lands on the back of the cow costume. It smolders, then catches. The dyed leather curls inward, feeding the flame. Smoke fills the air. The drums falter. Someone screams. He stumbles forward, trips, tries to crawl out. But the suit is tight, sewn shut in places, for realism. The wooden frame collapses inward as he thrashes. By the time the fire is extinguished, it is too late. What remains is a blackened shell. The ritual ends in silence. No one moves. The attendants kneel. Some say a second performer fainted. Others claim the priest inside made no sound. He simply knelt once, then never stood again. Historians still argue whether this was a religious rite gone wrong or a theatrical accident. Some believe the performer was not royalty, but a noble chosen for the honor. Others argue he was the ruler himself, too proud to assign the task to another. A fringe theory posits that the costume itself was designed as a trap, an assassination disguised as ritual. A flame-retardant suit had been removed days earlier, replaced. But no records confirm this. Afterward, the festival was never performed again, or if it was, it became quiet, private, without fire, without costumes. A new rite emerged decades later, simple dances beneath fig trees, masks of bark chants without spectacle. The cow suit was never rebuilt. You walk past the place where he burned. Ash still lines the floor in a faded circle. The air holds that faint scent, singed hide and ceremonial oil. A warning. Sometimes tradition is a costume that tightens until it chokes. And no one remembers the words that were supposed to be sung next. Now you find yourself in the soft golden sun of a rocky coastal cliff. The breeze is slow, dry, and salted from the Aegean Sea. A seagull circles overhead. Below, white marble columns rise from crumbling foundations. You are in ancient Greece, possibly Rhodes, possibly Aegina. The century unclear, somewhere between the 5th and 6th centuries BCE. A philosopher king reclines beneath a fig tree lost in thought. His name is Aeschylus, not a king by title but revered, respected. A playwright, a thinker, a man whose works defined his age. His words still echo in amphitheaters. He has seen war. He has seen peace. And now he seeks silence. His head is bald. His robes are loose. His mind is distant. But death comes anyway, and not from poison, not from an enemy, not from age, from above. You hear the cry before you see it. A sharp, reedy whistle. A falcon. A kite. No, an eagle. It flies overhead with powerful wings. Its claws clutch something round, something heavy. A tortoise. This eagle, following instinct, believes the philosopher's head is a stone, a hard surface on which to drop its prey to crack the shell open. The bald crown of Aeschylus shines in the sun, and so the bird lets go. The tortoise falls. It strikes his head with a sharp, decisive crack. The shell breaks. So does his skull. He dies instantly. No struggle. No final words. One moment of pondering, then nothing. Historians still argue whether this account is literal or metaphorical. The ancient biographer Valerius Maximus recorded the event as fact. Others suggest it was a parable invented later, a caution against solitude or hubris. But multiple sources, Greek and Roman, repeat the story nearly identically. A fringe interpretation from a 20th century classicist suggests the tale is symbolic, representing the fall of wisdom to the brutality of nature. Aeschylus, the thinker, struck down by an unthinking creature. But that theory lacks ancient support. What is not debated is the result. Aeschylus died suddenly, unexpectedly, and the cause was not war or politics or decay, but a falling reptile released by a hungry bird. Afterward, laws were passed in some city-states requiring outdoor philosophers to wear cloth head wraps. In jest or in earnest, it's unclear. Several mosaics from later periods show scholars seated beneath trees holding books with stylized birds overhead. A wink to what happened that day. You walk past the place now. The fig tree is gone, but a flat marble slab stands there, etched with his name. Nearby, a cracked tortoise shell sits encased in glass. Not confirmed to be the tortoise, but still labeled with a simple tag, cause of death, a ruler of thought, struck down mid-thought, by instinct, not intent, and the eagle never knew what it did. You step into quiet now. Stone corridors narrow into soft walls. Tapestries hang still. The scent changes sandalwood frankincense, aged cotton. You're in the Ottoman Empire, mid-1600s. Deep within the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. Beyond the halls of public court and diplomatic intrigue lies the inner sanctum, the harem, and deeper still private chambers of the Sultan himself. You are walking through silence. Sultan Ibrahim II lies on a divan breathing shallowly. He has been sedated. Not ill, just exhausted emotionally, physically, politically. He trusts no one. Not the viziers, not the scribes, not the physicians, and especially not his relatives. It's been years of pressure. Paranoia whispers. He sought retreat, found it in heavy opiates mixed with rose water. And now he sleeps, too deeply. A servant enters, a eunuch, elderly, calm, holding a thin cotton shroud and a strip of silk cord. His orders were given the night before. Prepare the Sultan's body for rest should he not rise by dawn. This was not unusual. His Majesty often requested rituals of rest when under sedation. The palace followed strict rules, but the servant hesitates. Then proceeds. He wraps the body, slowly, gently, begins from the feet, loops the silk cord 3 times around the chest, ties it near the neck, as instructed. He does not check the pulse. The Sultan's breath had been faint, his skin cool from the herbs, but still alive. Barely. By the time the chamberlain arrives, it is too late. The cloth is damp. The cord pulled tight. The body still warm, but lifeless. The official report states natural causes. But behind closed doors, voices begin to whisper. Historians still argue whether it was a tragic mistake or a silent coup. Some records note political pressure to remove Ibrahim. Others claim his own mother had begun the preparations in fear of his instability. A fringe theory holds that he was never dead at all, merely unconscious, buried too quickly, awakened too late. A gravedigger later swore he heard movement in the tomb days after the burial. That claim was dismissed as drunken fantasy. Regardless, the body was interred without delay. The ceremony was swift. The empire could not afford confusion. You pause near the chamber. The windows are shuttered. The air is still. No plaque marks this room. Just an embroidered cushion left in the corner, forgotten, its edges frayed. In the aftermath, new rules were established. 2 witnesses required for all royal deaths. 3 physicians must agree. No burial within 12 hours. An empire's policy built on a servant's hesitation. He died not by sword, not by poison, but by process, by ritual, by routine. And no one screamed. The room you enter now smells sharp metal, powdery minerals, old flowers left too long in a vase. You're in a castle again. But this one is different. Narrower, closer. Mirrors line the walls. Ivory brushes rest on a glass tray. You are in England. Late 1500s, the Tudor court. The chambers of Lady Catherine de Vere. She sits at her vanity, eyes half-lidded. Fingers tremble slightly as she dips a swan feather brush into a jar of cream. The paste is thick, heavy, white as frost. She spreads it across her face in small, careful circles. She is preparing for court. The look is called the Mask of Youth. An alabaster tone achieved with Venetian Carusse white lead carbonate mixed with vinegar. It hides pockmarks, age, and fatigue. Every lady of status uses it. It is elegance, it is fashion, and it is poison. She applies it every day. The lid seeps in through the pores. Slowly, cumulatively. At first it causes breakouts, then fatigue, then swelling along the jawline. Gums recede, teeth loosen. But Lady Catherine presses on. She cannot appear tired, cannot appear older. The Queen demands perfection. So she powders her temples, her throat, even her eyelids. Today she feels faint. She tries to rise from her stool. Her legs give out. She falls to the floor with a soft thud. Her maid rushes in, calls for help. But by the time the court physician arrives, she is unresponsive. Within the hour, she is dead. The official cause is listed as general weakness, but private notes describe a pale residue around the eyes and lips and signs of gum disease and internal swelling. The physician had seen it before, but said nothing. Historians still argue if she died from a single exposure or years of accumulation. Some believe she had begun mixing the ceruse herself, adding ground pearls for shimmer, unknowingly increasing toxicity. Others point to imported French rouge that contained mercury. A fringe theory even suggests sabotage a rival lady added ground glass to her powder box. But the evidence is speculative. No arrests followed. After her death, whispers spread. Women began using lighter applications. Some switched to rice powder. Others added milk or beeswax as a buffer. Still, ceruse remained popular for nearly another century. You glance at her vanity. The jar is still open. The brush lies across its rim, bristles stiff. A mirror reflects only dust and your shadow. She sought beauty, and it killed her, slowly, silently, and not a wrinkle remained. You walk into a small chamber tucked behind a throne room. Rich red drapes hang motionless. The stone floor is clean, polished, almost too polished. This is the personal lavatory of King Henri III of Navarre, year 1587. The court is in session nearby, a council meeting long and tedious. Henri, tired of the bickering, has excused himself for a private moment. You follow him inside. The chamber is small but not crude. A velvet-cushioned wooden seat sits atop a lidded box. Perfumed water sits in a pewter bowl nearby. A small window lets in a sliver of midday light. It's peaceful here. Safe. Henri closes the door, lowers himself onto the seat, exhales. Then he cries out. Not loud. Just once. A sharp intake of breath followed by a choking sound. His attendants, standing just outside, hear nothing. The thick door muffles everything. By the time they check on him, he is gone. No signs of struggle. No poison found in his drink. No visible wounds until his robe is pulled back. There just beneath him a spike rises through the commode seat. Thin, sharp forge to pierce upward and inward with surgical precision. A hidden trap. Historians still argue who placed it. Some believe it was installed months earlier, meant for someone else. A courtier. A bishop. Perhaps even the queen. Others think Henri himself had it installed during a period of paranoia, then forgot it. The latter sounds ridiculous until you read his diaries. He was obsessed with hidden dangers. He once had all the palace windows re-anchored to prevent assassins slipping in as birds. He commissioned a custom fork to test his food for poison. He distrusted his own footstools. And yes, he requested a hidden trap in the lavatory intended to deter enemies. But the mechanism was triggered by pressure. Without a key, it could not be disabled. He sat and triggered it himself. A fringe account claims a spy tampered with the seat's counterweight the night before. That the mechanism was not supposed to engage unless a certain weight was applied. But no evidence supports this. Only speculation. The seat was removed. Quietly. The death was described as natural, though everyone close to the court knew otherwise. The palace carpenter vanished 2 weeks later. Afterward, lavatory designs changed. Padded lids, no compartments. Nobles refused to use commodes without visual inspection. One English ambassador refused all furniture with hidden joints. You exit the chamber now. The door remains ajar. The light still filters in. Nothing remains of the mechanism. Only a brass hinge in the floor sealed shut. He ruled a kingdom, dined with generals, drafted treaties, and died on the toilet by a blade of his own design. The breeze shifts one final time. You step out into soft daylight. A pale road winds down a grassy hill, toward an open square. Bells ring faintly in the distance. The scent of flowers floats past roses, lilies, daffodils. You are in southern France, the 12th century. It is a wedding day. Crowds gather in the village below. Pennants flutter. Musicians tune lyres and flutes. A pair of oxen pull a cart adorned with yellow sashes and garlands. Everyone is waiting for the moment. The royal wedding procession. Inside the stone chapel, Princess Isabeau of Auvergne is ready, hair braided with pearls, a white veil draped from her circlet to the small of her back. She smiles gently, hands folded, listening to the quiet murmur of attendants. Outside, her groom waits by the carriage. She steps out into sunlight. The crowd cheers. The horses stamp and toss their heads. Flower petals drift. The veil, light as air, lifts slightly behind her in the breeze. She walks slowly, carefully down the steps. A page helps guide her to the waiting carriage. Then it happens. Her veil, long and sheer, catches on the edge of the wooden wheel. She does not notice. As she lifts her foot to step up, the carriage jolts forward slightly. A driver, anxious, twitches the reins. The horses move. The veil pulls tight. It yanks her head backward suddenly, violently. She stumbles. One foot slips. Her neck twists. The fabric cuts deep into her throat before tearing loose. But by then she has fallen half beneath the carriage wheel. The iron-rimmed wheel rolls over her shoulder. Then her rib cage. The procession stops. Screams erupt. She dies before anyone can reach her. The veil lies beside her, crumpled, stained. The driver is pulled down and beaten by mourners. The horses rear and scatter petals underfoot. Historians still argue over who was to blame. Some cite poor planning. The veil was too long, trailing behind her by 3 feet. Others suggest the horses were too close, or the page was too small. A fringe claim appears in a 14th century chronicle that it was sabotage a rival noble jealous of her dowry. But that tale ends without resolution. The wedding was cancelled. The bells tolled in mourning that same evening. Her body was returned to the chapel in the same dress. The priest left the torn veil on the altar. Afterward, bridal fashion changed. Veils were shortened, carriages halted completely during boarding. Ceremonial walks became slower, more controlled. Mind-the-wheel brides were told for centuries. The square is empty now. The grass has grown where petals once fell. A low plaque marks the chapel stairs. Weathered by time, the name barely legible. She was 18, dressed for joy, carried away by a breeze and a wheel. And now the light fades. The chambers grow quiet. The torches burn low. The dust settles again onto forgotten ledgers, empty thrones, and cooling stone. You've walked through banquet halls and lonely garden cellars filled with wine courtyards scented with ash and snowy fields where breath no longer rose. You've watched crowns slip sideways, robes catch fire, voices die in silence. Not by war, not by conspiracy, but by chance. Clumsiness, clothing, animals, accidents. History remembers their names, their palaces, their treaties, but not how they fell from ladders, laughed too hard, or leaned too close to flame. These are the stories buried beneath gold plaques and marble busts. Embarrassing, strange, quietly human. And maybe that's the part worth remembering. Because even at the height of rule, when servants stand in rows and doors open before you, and maps stretch to every coast, you are still flesh, still fragile, still able to slip on wet stone or be undone by a gust of wind. Tonight, you've wandered through time's quieter corridors. So let that thought settle now. Let the images soften. The colors fade. The echoes grow distant. The halls behind you empty. The fire flickers lower. You close the final door. Let your breath slow. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let the quiet come. No more footsteps. Just stillness. Just sleep.